what I want to do is I want to give you some challenges and kind of where do we go from here, and some steps you can take forward. And I want to give you some tools and some ways to help you push down this road because we want to make it as attainable as possible for every church to live this out. So, concluding vision and goals, a full cultural shift. The goal and vision to move churches, believers, churches are just a collection of believers, outward with the gospel, sharing the love, the story, and the message of Jesus in organic ways. Now, I need to tell you something. The goal of seeing your church, and please hear this. I'm going to give you some really bad news. Who loves bad news? Nobody, but I'm going to give it to you. The goal is cultural shift in your church. How long, and I've been doing this now at Central Wesleyan Church. I led this at Central Wesleyan Church, and I've led this in different kinds of churches, and I've trained people that are leading it in churches in different countries around the world. And so we've got a lot of data and a lot of sense of timing of things. So here's the question. How long will it take if you are doing 30-day infusions with inspiration, with accountability, with teaching and training, and with planning in your every ministry, and if you have a team that makes this happen and you're living into this, and you're living it, and you're leading it, and you're pouring it into your boards, and this is becoming the culture of your church, how long does it take for the roots to go deep enough? Because you don't get fruit until you get the root, right? You got to get the roots deep. How long does it take for the roots to get deep enough and this to become part of your culture to start to see the harvest start to happen? Generally speaking, 18 to 24 months. That's our learnings over the last years, 18 to 24 months. You know what pastors want to do? They want to go to a seminar. They want to get a program. They want to go home. They want to plug and play it into their church. And they want, in the next month or two, to have a harvest. And here's the deal. The church I went to serve in Byron Center, Michigan, it took them 100 years to get stuck where they were. It wasn't going to change in 30 days or 60 days. Now, I've seen a lot of churches that within the first year, they start to see people come to know Jesus. They start to see conversions they haven't seen before. They start to see lives being changed. But I mean a real rooted cultural change where you say, we are a church that glorifies God in worship, that reaches in great fellowship and spiritual growth and learning and discipleship, and that reaches out with the gospel. That gospel part's becoming part of who we are. It's 1.5 years to 2 years in most cases. And too many church leaders don't have the stomach for 2 years of work without seeing the big turnaround. But I have not found a shortcut on this one because it has to start with our lives. We have to start living it. We pour it into our board members. We have a whole process in organic outreach for churches that goes through how that vision gets poured into the life of the church and how you consistently bring that vision into the church. And it's just this relentless commitment. Because here's the reality. You're relentlessly committed to putting on church services. You plan services. You plan sermons. You plan music. It doesn't just happen. You do that every single week. You plan discipleship and youth things and children's things. We do that every single week. Evangelism, we want to pop in once a year, give it a weekend, and say we got it covered. It takes the same intentionality and focus and energy, the relentlessness of saying, this is who we are and what we do. So pour into this for 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years, and you start to see the culture change. People are living in a new way, and you see God. And then all of a sudden, people are coming to know Jesus, not just through your church services, but through all the ministries of your church. In our church, many people are coming to know Jesus out there in different ministries and in people's lives, and the last thing they end up doing is starting to come to church. They come to know Jesus in their relationships with people in our church and in different ministries in our church, and they eventually become worshipers with us. Some become worshipers and then get involved in other things. Some get involved out there and come in, but that's great as long as we're seeing people come to know Jesus. A conclusion: after over a decade leading the Billy Graham Center for Evangelism, Lon Allison, I don't know if you know the name Lon Allison. If you get to know him, he's a great writer, a great evangelist, and Lon Allison was leading the Billy Graham Center for Evangelism. He'd led them for 1 year. And he came to a seminar that I was doing, and he came up to me afterwards, and Lon's become a dear friend. He and his wife Marie are just dear friends of me and Sherry. But he came up to me after he heard me speak about 7 or 8 years ago, and he said, I just had a summit with some of the top leaders in church evangelism in the whole country. And he said, we spent about 3 days together, and we were trying to come up with what is the best transferable, usable tool to help churches really go forward in evangelism. And after 2.5, 3 days of meeting, this was our conclusion. There isn't one. We can't find anything that's truly transferable, that everything is kind of a niche type thing. And he actually said to me, what you are doing right now, what you're working on, what you're trying to do in the local church, he said, this this will transfer to any church and any culture because it's not about America or a program. It's about the gospel and the Bible and truth and grace. Everything you're talking about, any pastor anywhere can go, yeah, that's what wait, you mean we need to inspire people, keep them accountable, teach them, and plan for outreach? That's not cultural. That's just sensible, right? So he said, I want to throw all the resources of the Billy Graham Center behind what you're doing and help you. And we've been working together ever since. Find a way to mobilize your church. Again, we'll keep creating tools with Organic Outreach International, and we'll give everything. If it's not owned by a publisher, we'll give everything away for free. And we'll do all we can to help you, but you've got to take it and run with it and live into it. And so I just want to challenge you to look and say, don't be one of those churches that says, well, we've tried it, this doesn't work. If you will work at this, if you will get your people praying, if you'll keep your people accountable to engage with non-believers, God's going to work in a great way. The commitment, an organic model, meaning a natural model. The way I describe it to people is this. What we want to help you with is an operating system. If you have a computer, so I got my computer right here, and if you have a computer and you have no operating system, I can plug all kinds of programs into my computer. It won't work. I need an OS. And every so often it's the frustration of updating your operating system, right? But if the operating system isn't working, the programs don't work. The operating system for the local church is what we're trying to help people with. I don't have programs. I know hundreds of outreach programs. If your operating system is working, in other words, if your church believes the gospel, loves lost people, extends grace, all the stuff we've been talking about, if you're being the church and really loving people well, almost any program you use will probably work in some way. And if you don't have the right operating system, you're not loving people well, you're not extending grace, you're not holding to the gospel, almost any program you put in won't work because you don't have an operating system. So what we want to do is help you get to a place where you're functioning in a healthy manner. So when a pastor calls me and says, should we do small groups? Should we do seeker small groups? Now, I know Mary Schaller, who leads Q Place. I know the leader of Alpha, and I know Gary Poole is a good friend. He's spoken at our conference before, and he did all the Willow Creek seeker stuff. The top three seeker small group ministries in the world, I know all three of them. Somebody will come and say, well, should we do seeker small groups at our church? And here's my response. I don't know. I don't know if it'll work in your church. You're the pastor. You're the elder. You tell me. What I do know is this. If you don't love people well and don't believe the gospel and don't extend grace and don't pray, if you're not being the right kind of church, you'll get people in with seeker small groups and they're going to leave because they're not well loved. So I don't know if that's the right program for you, but I know all three of those work really well in churches that have a good operating system. And I also know that all three of those things will fail in churches that don't have the right operating system. Does that make sense? So search deep and make sure that you're functioning the way God wants you to function as a church. And then you can have an organic model, a model that's natural for your church, which means you design it and you shape it in a way that fits your church. That's why all of our resources are electronic. You can edit them and you don't need permission. Just edit them and change them. I don't like this part. Fine, throw it out. Put in something that works for you. Just do it. Then, intentional evangelism and discipleship. This idea of seeing people's lives transformed and continue to be transformed by the power of Jesus Christ, that you wed evangelism and discipleship together. Help, tools, and support for every church. Again, on our website, look at that. If you're motivated enough to find it, if you can't find your way into the website, get Walt's number, call him, and he'll literally walk you through, helping you find whatever you need. And if you need something that we haven't provided, let us know, and we'll try to create new things. And please, listen, if you create something really helpful for evangelism and you're willing to give it away, tell us. And if you'll give it to us, we'll share. Right now, we have about 23,000 churches around the United States and the world that now are utilizing resources that we've created. So if you've created something really good and you're willing to give it away, we'll give it away to 23,000 other churches. If you want to charge for it, then you create your own website and have fun with that. But if you want to give it away, we'll help you give stuff away, because that's where our hearts are at. The plan. How we offer help to every church. I would say talk with your district superintendents. If you want to do something in your area and get your churches mobilized and trained, if you want to create a training hub there, if you want us to train a trainer for your region, let us know, and we will be honored to be part of that. Intensive learning experience in Monterey, you can see there, happens November 8th and 9th this year, and then November 9th through 11th is our conference. It's a long flight, but if you want to get there, come and join us. We'd love to have you there. Monthly cohorts. We do online gatherings. Right now, we have a group, and I'm looking at am I 2:50? Oh, we've got till 3 o'clock, right? Perfect. Okay, thank you. I'm really big about starting and ending on time. I just like to honor your schedule and what you're doing. So I wanted to make sure I can lose track of time. I'm a pastor. I could go all day long. And so monthly cohorts. What we do is we gather like-minded leaders and we coach them monthly. And we do it online. We do it in a virtual gathering. And so I've got a cohort I've been part of 2 years. Every regional leader for a denomination we work with, from the Rocky Mountains to the West Coast, they have 7 regions. We're coaching a trainer for each region, and we're preparing them to now lead in their regions. And so we get together online, and I can be anywhere in the world, and we can fire up, and I can be there with them. And so we do that every 30 days. Why every 30 days? Because they need to be infused every 30 days. What do you think I do in that cohort? Can anybody guess the 4 things we do in a cohort? Inspiration, accountability, learning, and planning. As a matter of fact, every one of the pastors in our cohort has to have their personal outreach plan on a shared Google Doc that we have on our screen, and they can update and edit how that's going, who they're reaching out for, so we keep them accountable every single 30 days. And these are pastors and national leaders. That they need to be held accountable. I need to be held accountable. I meet with our outreach leader at our church every 30 days, and he keeps me accountable because I get so busy teaching about this stuff, sometimes I forget to live it. That can happen? Yeah, it can happen to all of us. And so if you say, I'd love to look into being part of a cohort, get Walt's card, call him. Dave, you just started a cohort with, I think, 6 or 8 DSs, right? And they're going to be, and you're spread across Oklahoma, different states, right? But they're going to be meeting, 1 or 2 years, they're going to be meeting together with Walt, who's the leader of our ministry, who's really good at this, and he's going to be walking them through the curriculum we have and what we're going to do is we're going to now learn from them and shape stuff for denominational leaders, and that'll help us do a better job next time when we help another group. We're just learning and sharing and trying to give things away and help churches move forward. And so, cohorts, if that sounds interesting to you, let us know. Excuse me. Free resources and tools, organicoutreach.org. I've talked about that already. Online campus. We have a whole university platform online. So if you guys say, oh, we want to create our own cohorts and we want to start using the resources to train our own people, we can set you up on our platform and get you set up to be able to work with your own teams and teach you how to do it, and we'll do that and help you. We actually now have a spot on Zondervan's Publishing on their website for the Nazarene Church, where any Nazarene church doesn't have to go to us to get books for Organic Outreach, that you can get them from Zondervan directly for 50% off, and I think free postage, which is what they sell to bookstores for. So you can cut out the bookstores and get the best deal possible. I get my books at 50% off, and I have to pay for postage. You get them at 50% off and don't pay for postage. I'm going to become a Nazarene. But that's true. I actually have to pay more for my books than you have to pay for them. Because we did a deal because we're working with the Nazarene Church, and we said, will you do this for them? And they said, absolutely. And they've set that up. And so if you want to get that link, contact your DS, or if you can't figure out, call Walt, and we'll make sure you get those links, and you can go and cut out the middleman. And you got to save churches money because churches, that's always a challenge. Regional training events, organic outreach intensives. We're doing up to 6 of them. I wrote this about a month ago. We're now doing 6 intensives in India. We're doing 1 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We're doing 1 2 days from now on the East Coast in Virginia with the Nazarene Church, with the Wesleyan Church in West Michigan. If you want to do a training, and the 2-day intensive is actually an intensive where you'll bring your pastors in, and for 2 days, they get almost triple what you're getting here. And so it's like all day long. It's really intense. I'll just keep teaching, and I speed up so I can get more in. No, I always try to pull the reins in. Could you imagine if I drank caffeine? I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. This is true. I am just wound up. I wrote an article years ago called "Everything I Used to Get Spanked for Doing, I Get Paid for Doing Now." It was about parenting. But when I was a kid, I was hyper, and now he's high energy. And so, anyways, I try to keep slowing myself down. But I get excited when I talk about evangelism, and I get going faster when I get excited. So if you want to talk about a regional event, let us know. Contact Walt, and we'll do all we can. We're scheduling 2018 and 19, and we'd love to come in and serve you that way. 1-day training sessions, that's what this is. So regionally hosted by local churches or ministries, so we do that sort of thing as well. And what's next? Here's my challenge to you. And I'm gonna be wrapping up in just a couple minutes here, and then we'll open Q&A. And again, I'll say if you need to get on the road or get traveling out of here, I'll pray. Is someone going to come up and wrap up for? Okay, then Terry will be coming up too. But let me a couple more thoughts, just to kind of where do we go from here? First, you see in your outline, pray, is our church ready to take a step into a new future with a deep commitment to the Great Commission and deeper levels of discipleship? If you say, I think we're really ready, talk with your DS, go on the website and see what we have that would help you in that. If you find something else that works better, tell me about it. I'll share that with others, but start down that road. Am I ready to give leadership in my church? This is a big question you got to ask. I think you have to ask the question, am I ready right now to lead outreach in my church? Meaning, I'm modeling it and living it in such a way that if other people followed my example, it would be good for our church. And some of you are going to honestly say, no, I'm not there. I need to be there. I want to be there. Some of you are going to have to do like Pastor Roy did and go find a bike to start riding or find something to do to start getting time with non-believers. So you're talking to your board and to your church members about your journey with people right now, not back when you were in college 35 years ago. And the last time I really shared Jesus with somebody was before I was a pastor. I talk to a lot of pastors that's true. I mean, I do it from the pulpit, but I don't do it interpersonally. So I got to look at my life, and I got to get some time to be with non-believers. I got to go to my board and say, listen, we're going to do this road together, but I got to have enough time to get away from here and actually have a life outside the church where I can get to know my neighbors again, or for the first time. For some of you, that's going to be your starting point. That's why it's a longer journey, because we have to live it if we're going to lead it. Some of you have to grapple with that. Will I make outreach a core value in every ministry of our church? Children's ministry needs to be outreach. Youth ministry needs to be outreach. Women's ministry needs to be outreach. And there's a way to structure that we kind of help people, we lead people through. People that come to our intensive, they leave with their 3-year plan laid out, basically. They're designing a plan for their region, for their... Jim Kramer, who I think is the Nazarene kind of leader for evangelism, came out to our intensive, I think, 2 years ago, and he left with a plan to influence the Nazarene church. And he's been pushing into that and pursuing that ever since. And he designed that when he was with us. And part of that, those 2 days, is not just theory, but it's designing for your church or your region or for your movement. Will we make a 2-year commitment to learn, grow, and be stretched? Will you say, I'm not going to try this for 2 months and say, oh, this isn't changing everything, but I'm going to take a 2-year commitment to really go after this. I think you need to if you're going to see real fruit happen. And then begin talking to the key leader of every ministry area in your church about joining you on the journey. Who leads your children's ministry? Who is your person on your board? Who's your key lay leader? Who's you name the ministry, who's leading? And start to talk to them and say, can we go on this journey together? Can we decide that outreach is not going to be a thing that happens over there in the church? It's going to be a thing that happens in here, in the midst of everything we do, in the midst of all that we do.